Every one of us has worn a mask, and every one of us has been deceived by one. Carl Jung taught that the persona, the face we show the world, is never the full truth of who we are. Behind it lies the shadow, the hidden motives, desires, and fears that often leak out in subtle ways. A fake friend lives almost entirely in the mask, showing you charm, loyalty, or warmth on the surface, while their shadow whispers something very different underneath. To spot them instantly, you must train your perception not just to hear words, but to sense the deeper psychic currents at play. Jung reminded us that the unconscious always reveals itself, even when the conscious tries to conceal. Today we will step into this realm together, exploring how projection, shadow, and persona operate in relationships, and how your own awareness can cut through illusions to reveal truth the moment it stands before you. Reaction and the persona masks of the fake friend and the subtle cracks where the shadow leaks through is one of the clearest illustrations of Jung's psychological insights into the duality of human interaction. Jung described the persona as the social mask we wear to adapt to the demands of society. It is necessary for survival, allowing us to function in groups, navigate cultural norms, and maintain relationships. Yet it is not the full truth of the self, only a fragment carefully selected for public display. Behind the persona lies the shadow, the dissound and repressed elements of the psyche that the conscious ego refuses to acknowledge. In genuine friendships, the persona eventually softens and authenticity shines through, revealing both strengths and vulnerabilities in a way that fosters trust. In fake friendships, however, the persona becomes rigid, overdeveloped, and deceptive. The fake friend invests heavily in maintaining a polished mask of loyalty, kindness, or support, but because no mask can conceal the shadow entirely, cracks inevitably appear. It is in these cracks that their true intentions reveal themselves, often to those with the awareness to notice. The fake friend constructs a persona that mirrors what you want to see. They present themselves as agreeable, trustworthy, and affirming, often exaggerating these qualities to gain acceptance. Jung noted that personas are shaped not only by internal choices, but also by external demands. The fake friend studies your expectations, desires, and vulnerabilities, and then fashions their persona accordingly. If you crave support, they play the supportive confidant. If you admire ambition, they present themselves as equally driven. If you value loyalty, they act devoted. This adaptability makes their persona convincing, but it also makes it brittle, for it is not anchored in authenticity. The more a person relies on persona without grounding in the self, the more strain the psyche experiences. The unconscious shadow, denied expression, begins to leak out in subtle ways. These leaks are the small inconsistencies, slips, and contradictions that betray the mask. One of the most telling cracks is inconsistency between words and actions. A fake friend may speak with warmth and loyalty, but their actions reveal self, interest, envy, or indifference. They promise support, but fail to appear when needed. They celebrate your successes with words, but subtly undermine you in behavior. Jung emphasized that the unconscious always reveals itself, even when the conscious tries to conceal. Inconsistency is the voice of the shadow, slipping through the cracks of the persona. Genuine friends are consistent, even if imperfect, because their behavior is rooted in authenticity rather than performance. Fake friends, by contrast, cannot maintain the mask indefinitely, and small betrayals accumulate until the image collapses. Another subtle crack is the presence of envy disguised as admiration. The fake friend may shower you with compliments, but beneath the surface their shadow is filled with resentment or competitiveness. Jung described envy as a shadow emotion, often denied because it conflicts with the persona of loyalty or affection. Yet envy cannot remain hidden forever. It reveals itself in micro-expressions, tone of voice, or the faint hesitation before a congratulatory word. It shows up in backhanded compliments or in the way they shift attention back to themselves when you share good news. The persona projects admiration, but the shadow leaks through, whispering hostility. Those who are attuned to such subtleties will sense the dissonance, the incongruity between surface warmth and underlying tension. The fake friend's shadow also leaks through in moments of stress or fatigue. Jung observed that the persona requires energy to maintain, and under pressure, the mask weakens. In these moments, the shadow emerges abruptly, often surprising both the friend and those around them. A sudden outburst of anger, a sarcastic jab, or a moment of gloating at your misfortune are examples of the shadow breaking through the persona. The fake friend may quickly apologize or cover it with humor, but the truth has already revealed itself. These flashes are invaluable glimpses into their unconscious motives, showing that the loyalty of the persona is not genuine, but a facade barely concealing resentment or self-interest. Another place where the cracks appear is in their inability to tolerate your boundaries. A genuine friend respects limits because they value the wholeness of the relationship. A fake friend, however, becomes frustrated or manipulative when you assert boundaries, because the persona they wear is designed to gain access and control. When denied this access, the shadow emerges in subtle guilt, tripping, sulking, or attempts to undermine your resolve. Jung taught that the shadow often expresses itself indirectly through passive, aggressive behavior or manipulation rather than overt aggression. Observing how a friend responds to boundaries is therefore one of the clearest ways to spot whether their persona is authentic or fake. The cracks also reveal themselves through projection. A fake friend may accuse you of qualities they secretly carry themselves. For instance, they may suggest that you are selfish, disloyal, or competitive, when in reality it is their shadow projecting outward. Jung emphasized that projection is one of the main ways the shadow becomes visible, because people tend to see in others what they cannot face in themselves. When a friend constantly criticizes you for flaws that do not align with your authentic self, it may be their shadow speaking, betraying the falsehood of their persona. The intensity of their accusations often signals the depth of their repression. Dreams and intuition also play a role in noticing the cracks. Jung argued that the unconscious communicates not only through slips and projections, but also through symbolic imagery and subtle feelings. You may sense unease around a fake friend, even when they appear supportive, or you may dream of betrayal, masks, duplicity that reflects your unconscious awareness of their true nature. Intuition is often dismissed by the ego, which prefers to believe the conscious persona. But Jung taught that the unconscious often perceives truths before they reach consciousness. Trusting these subtle signals is key to spotting deception. The cracks in the persona may not always be visible to the rational mind, but they are felt by the unconscious as dissonance, a sense that something does not align. The shadow leaks through in patterns of gossip or betrayal. Fake friends often reveal their nature, not directly, but in how they speak of others. If they gossip about those they call friends, the shadow is showing itself, because the mask of loyalty cannot conceal the impulse to undermine. Jung saw such behaviors as unconscious repetitions, patterns driven by unacknowledged shadow material. The fake friend cannot stop themselves from betraying others because the shadow demands expression. Eventually, that same pattern will be directed toward you. Observing how they treat others is therefore a window into how they will treat you, no matter how convincing their persona seems in the moment. Jung's insight into individuation sheds further light on why fake friends rely so heavily on persona. Individuation is the process of integrating the unconscious and becoming whole. Those who resist this process remain trapped in superficial identities, overdeveloping the persona to hide the shadow. The fake friend fears authenticity because it would require confronting their own insecurities, envy, or hostility. Instead, they craft a mask that wins approval while burying the uncomfortable truths of their psyche. Yet the psyche will not remain divided indefinitely. The shadow insists on recognition, and even when repressed, it finds ways to emerge. Cracks are the psyche's attempt to restore balance, forcing truth into the open, however subtly. In observing these cracks, it is important not to become paranoid or hypercritical, but to cultivate discernment. Jung believed that every relationship involves both persona and shadow, and no one is entirely free of inconsistency. The difference lies in degree. A genuine friend may show cracks, but they are minor, occasional, and balanced by authenticity. A fake friend, however, lives primarily in the mask, with the shadow leaking through constantly. The mask dominates, and the cracks are signs of an underlying falsity that cannot be reconciled. The task is to distinguish between ordinary human imperfection and the systemic deception of someone who wears the persona as armor against authenticity. The persona mask of the fake friend ultimately reveals itself through contradiction. The unconscious does not lie, even when the conscious persona tries to deceive. Cracks in consistency, flashes of envy, resistance to boundaries, projections, gossip, and the subtle signals of intuition all point to the truth beneath the mask. Jung's framework gives us the tools to see these cracks, not as random flaws, but as meaningful signs of the shadow struggling for expression. To spot a fake friend instantly is to notice these signs, to recognize that the persona is too polished, too rigid, too disconnected from authenticity. It is to trust the evidence of the unconscious, which always perceives the truth behind the mask long before the ego admits it. By learning to see the cracks where the shadow leaks through, one gains the ability to discern deception, preserving not only trust in relationships, but also one's own psychological wholeness. The role of projection in blinding us to hidden motives and how to reclaim awareness is one of Jung's most profound insights into the way the psyche operates. And it is central to understanding why fake friends can so often deceive us. Projection, as Jung described it, is the unconscious process by which we attribute our own denied qualities, emotions, or desires onto others. It happens automatically without conscious control, and it colors the way we perceive relationships. Instead of seeing another person as they truly are, we see them through the lens of our own unacknowledged material. This makes us vulnerable because the projections we place on others can blind us to their real motives, disguising deception behind the reflections of our own desires or fears. To reclaim awareness, we must learn to withdraw projections, to take back what belongs to us, and to see others as they truly are rather than as mirrors of our own unconscious. Projection arises because the psyche seeks wholeness but resists facing its own shadow. When aspects of the self are too painful, shameful, or incompatible with the conscious self-image, they are repressed into the unconscious. Yet the psyche cannot simply erase them. Instead, they are encountered externally, projected onto other people. For instance, someone who denies their own selfishness may constantly perceive others as selfish, while someone who represses anger may see hostility in everyone around them. In the case of friendships, projection can make us blind to betrayal. If we repress our own capacity for deceit, we may project honesty onto others, assuming they are sincere even when their actions suggest otherwise. We see them not as they are, but as we unconsciously wish them to be, because facing the reality of deception would force us to confront our own dissound qualities. In the context of fake friends, projection often takes the form of idealization. We project loyalty, kindness, or trustworthiness onto them because these are qualities we value and wish to see reflected in our relationships. The unconscious desire for companionship, support, or validation leads us to project these traits, and in doing so, we ignore the evidence that contradicts them. A friend may repeatedly show signs of envy or duplicity, but we remain blind because our projection of loyalty blinds us to their shadow. Jung described this blindness as a form of enchantment, where the image we project onto another becomes more real to us than their actual behavior. We are enchanted by our own unconscious, mistaking projection for perception. This blindness is intensified by emotional investment. The more we desire connection, the more powerful the projection becomes. A lonely person, desperate for companionship, may project unconditional trust onto a friend, ignoring the cracks in their persona. A person longing for approval may project admiration, assuming that the friend genuinely supports them. Emotional needs amplify projection because the unconscious seizes the opportunity to externalize what the ego cannot provide for itself. The fake friend, consciously or unconsciously, takes advantage of this process, mirroring the projected qualities back to us in their persona. They play the role we expect, feeding our projection, and in doing so, they deepen our blindness. Projection also explains why betrayal by a fake friend feels so devastating. When the projection finally collapses, we are forced not only to see the other person's true motives, but also to confront the disowned aspects of ourselves that fueled the projection. The pain is doubled, the loss of trust in the friend, and the shock of facing our own unconscious. This is why betrayal often leads to profound self-questioning. How could I not see it? How could I be so blind? Jung's answer is that the blindness was not stupidity, but projection, a universal psychological process that distorts perception until awareness is reclaimed. Reclaiming awareness requires withdrawing projections, a process Jung described as one of the most difficult yet essential steps in individuation. To withdraw projection means to recognize that what we see in others often reflects something in ourselves. If we find ourselves idealizing a friend as perfectly loyal, we must ask, what part of my own loyalty am I denying or overemphasizing? If we accuse others of being selfish, we must ask, where in my own life does selfishness exist, denied or unacknowledged? By taking ownership of these qualities, we reduce the need to project them outward. The friend then appears more clearly, stripped of the layers of our unconscious expectation. This process of withdrawing projection is not about becoming suspicious of everyone, but about cultivating discernment. Jung taught that projection makes relationships inauthentic because we relate not to the person, but to the image we cast upon them. Reclaiming awareness allows us to engage with others as they truly are. This requires observing behavior closely, listening to intuition, and questioning discrepancies between words and actions. It also requires humility, because withdrawing projections means admitting that what we saw in others was often a reflection of ourselves. It is easier to blame a fake friend entirely for deception, but Jung insisted that growth comes from recognizing our role in the dynamic. The projection blinded us, and by reclaiming it, we free ourselves from future blindness. Dreams often assist in this process because they dramatize the dynamics of projection symbolically. A dream of being betrayed may not only point to an external friend, but also to an internal betrayal, the self-denial of its own shadow. Dreams may present figures who embody qualities we despise or admire, reminding us that these qualities belong to us as much as to others. Jung encouraged individuals to dialogue with dream figures, asking them what they represent, and in doing so, reclaiming the projected material. This inner work reduces the tendency to project unconsciously, making us more aware of the true motives of those around us. Another method of reclaiming awareness lies in active imagination. Jung's technique of engaging directly with images from the unconscious. By visualizing and conversing with figures that represent shadow qualities, envy, deceit, or hostility, we begin to integrate them consciously. This reduces the compulsion to project them outward. A person who admits, yes, I am capable of envy, is less likely to be blinded when a friend's envy emerges. Instead of denying the possibility, they recognize it clearly because they have already faced it within themselves. Integration of the shadow makes projection less blinding, allowing relationships to be seen in greater truth. Awareness also grows through attention to subtle cues in behavior. Projection blinds us by making us interpret signs according to our fantasy rather than reality. To reclaim awareness, we must learn to notice when words and actions do not align, when warmth feels strained, or when admiration carries a hidden sting, these subtle cracks are often dismissed because they contradict the projection, but they are crucial indicators of truth. Jung advised that the unconscious always reveals itself, and if we are attentive, we will see it. The task is to resist the temptation to reinterpret these signs to fit the projection. When a friend betrays confidence, we must accept that action as reality rather than excuse it away with our fantasy of loyalty. The collective dimension of projection also plays a role in friendships. Society itself encourages certain projections, such as the belief that friends are always supportive, loyal, and trustworthy. These cultural ideals reinforce our tendency to project, making us blind to the complexities of real human behavior. Reclaiming awareness means questioning not only personal projections, but collective ones as well. Jung emphasized that individuation often requires breaking from collective illusions, seeing through the masks that society insists are real. In friendships, this means acknowledging that not everyone who appears loyal truly is, and that trust must be earned through authenticity rather than assumed through projection. The reclamation of awareness is a gradual process requiring continuous reflection. Projection will never disappear entirely because it is an inherent function of the psyche, but it can be reduced and recognized. Each time we notice ourselves idealizing or demonizing someone, we have an opportunity to ask, what in me corresponds to this perception? By reclaiming these projections, we strengthen our ability to discern hidden motives in others. Fake friends thrive in the blindness created by projection. Awareness strips away their power. Once the projection is withdrawn, their mask becomes transparent, and the shadow they attempt to conceal becomes visible. The role of projection, then, is not only to blind, but also to teach. It reveals what we have not yet owned within ourselves. Betrayal, disappointment, or disillusionment with a fake friend often becomes a catalyst for inner growth, because it forces us to confront the projections that allowed the deception to persist. By reclaiming awareness, we transform the experience from mere pain into psychological insight. Jung believed that such moments, though difficult, are essential steps in individuation. They bring us closer to wholeness by exposing the unconscious forces that shape our relationships. In this way, projection is both danger and opportunity. It blinds us to hidden motives, making us vulnerable to deceit, but it also provides a mirror that reflects our own unconscious. To reclaim awareness is to turn that mirror inward, to see not only the truth of the other, but also the truth of ourselves. It is to withdraw illusions and engage with reality both within and without. When this awareness is cultivated, fake friends lose their power because the persona they present can no longer enchant us. We see the cracks, we sense the shadow, and we recognize the truth. In reclaiming awareness, we not only protect ourselves from deception, but also advance in the lifelong journey toward wholeness, where projection gives way to authentic perception and relationships grounded in reality rather than fantasy. The intuitive recognition of authenticity versus deception as guided by the unconscious is one of the most profound capacities Jung attributed to the human psyche, and it is a capacity many people dismiss or ignore because it does not operate in the rational or logical frameworks the ego prefers. Jung emphasized that the unconscious is always at work, processing impressions, subtle cues, and hidden dynamics that the conscious mind overlooks. This unconscious awareness expresses itself through intuition, a faculty that alerts us to truths before they can be articulated in words. In the realm of friendships, especially when distinguishing between genuine bonds and deceptive ones, intuition becomes a crucial guide. Fake friends may maintain convincing personas, but the unconscious perceives the cracks in their performance. It picks up on incongruities in tone, body language, or energy, and transmits this awareness through feelings of unease, dreams, or sudden insights. To recognize authenticity versus deception instantly requires not the development of sharper logic, but the willingness to trust and refine intuition as an ally of the unconscious. Intuition functions as a kind of inner compass rooted in the collective unconscious, where archetypal patterns reside. Authenticity resonates with the archetype of truth, harmony, and wholeness, while deception resonates with fragmentation, falsity, and shadow, even when the conscious mind is persuaded by the mask of the fake friend. The unconscious detects the dissonance between archetype and reality. This dissonance is felt in the body as tension, in the emotions as unease, or in sudden images that arise without explanation. Jung often spoke of how the psyche expresses itself symbolically. Intuition is the symbolic voice made felt rather than spoken. It is the unconscious communicating that something does not align. People often dismiss these impressions because they cannot justify them logically, but Jung would argue that logic is only one mode of knowing, and intuition often perceives what logic cannot. The ability to recognize authenticity through intuition is tied to the integration of the shadow. Jung observed that people who deny their own shadow become more vulnerable to deception because they cannot see it in others. A person who has never confronted their own capacity for envy may overlook envy in a friend, projecting instead loyalty or admiration. By contrast, someone who has integrated their shadow is more perceptive. They recognize the subtle signs of deceit because they have already acknowledged those impulses in themselves. Intuition, in this sense, is sharpened by self-knowledge. The more one integrates the unconscious, the clearer intuition becomes. Authenticity resonates as congruence between outer persona and inner reality, while deception reveals itself as discord, and the integrated individual feels the difference instinctively. This recognition often emerges in dreams. Jung considered dreams the royal road to the unconscious, offering insights that the conscious mind ignores. A dream of betrayal, masks, or false companions may symbolize the unconscious warning about a relationship. For instance, one might dream of a friend wearing a costume or hiding behind a wall, symbols of deception. Alternatively, one might dream of a companion standing openly in light, symbols of authenticity. The dream does not present literal predictions, but symbolic truths about the psychic reality of the relationship. Those who pay attention to their dreams gain an additional layer of intuitive recognition, seeing through deception by trusting the images their unconscious provides. Body awareness is another channel through which intuition communicates. Jung emphasized that psyche and soma are deeply interconnected. When encountering deception, the body often reacts before the mind understands. A tightening in the chest, a knot in the stomach, or a sudden sense of fatigue in someone's presence may signal that the unconscious has perceived falsity. These bodily cues are often ignored in favor of rational explanations, but they are part of the intuitive recognition the unconscious provides. By contrast, authenticity often produces a sense of ease, openness, and calm. The body relaxes in the presence of truth because it resonates with the congruence of inner and outer alignment. Cultivating awareness of these somatic signals is a way of honoring intuition, allowing the unconscious to guide perception beyond surface appearances. Jung also emphasized the role of synchronicity in revealing truth. Synchronicity, meaningful coincidence, is a way the unconscious communicates through external events. For example, one might be reflecting on doubts about a friend when a book falls open to a passage about betrayal, or one overhears a conversation about false loyalty. These events, though seemingly random, carry symbolic significance that resonates with the inner state. Synchronicity can confirm intuitive suspicions, guiding recognition of deception or authenticity. It is the psyche's way of orchestrating meaning across inner and outer worlds, bridging unconscious awareness with conscious attention. Recognizing synchronicities requires openness, a willingness to see beyond coincidence into the symbolic fabric of reality that Jung believed underlies existence. The process of refining intuitive recognition involves cultivating silence and reflection. In a world dominated by noise and distraction, intuition is easily drowned out. Jung himself retreated to Bollingen Tower, where solitude and simplicity allowed him to hear the voice of the unconscious more clearly. In everyday life, moments of stillness, journaling, meditation, or quiet walks create space for intuition to surface. In these moments, impressions that were ignored in the business of the day rise into awareness. The unease in a friend's voice, the contradiction in their words, the subtle coldness behind their smile. These impressions are not accidents. They are fragments of unconscious perception seeking recognition. By giving them attention, we allow intuition to inform us about authenticity and deception. Authenticity itself has qualities that resonate intuitively. Jung described the self as the archetype of wholeness. And when someone lives authentically, they radiate coherence between inner and outer life. Their words align with their actions. Their presence feels stable, and their energy does not shift dramatically with circumstances. The unconscious recognizes this coherence and responds with trust. By contrast, deception radiates incoherence. The persona says one thing, but the shadow leaks through in tone, gesture, or subtle hostility. The unconscious perceives this split and sends signals of mistrust. Intuitive recognition, then, is the psyche's way of detecting coherence versus incoherence, authenticity versus falsity. It is not mystical, but psychological, the natural sensitivity of the unconscious to patterns of alignment or distortion. However, intuition can be clouded by projection. When we project our own desires or fears onto others, we misinterpret intuitive signals. A person desperate for connection may interpret unease as shyness rather than deceit, while someone fearful of betrayal may misinterpret authenticity as danger. To refine intuition, we must continually examine our projections, withdrawing them so that perception is less distorted. Jung insisted that individuation requires this work, because without it, relationships are governed by fantasy rather than reality. When projection is reduced, intuition becomes clearer, more trustworthy, and more accurate in discerning authenticity. Reclaiming trust in intuition also requires courage, because intuition often warns us of truths we do not want to face. To recognize that a friend is fake, despite their charm and apparent loyalty, is painful. The ego resists such recognition because it threatens stability. Yet, Jung emphasized that growth requires facing uncomfortable truths, no matter how disruptive. Intuition does not flatter the ego, it confronts it with reality. To follow intuition is to risk losing relationships built on illusion, but it is also to preserve wholeness by refusing deception. Those who honor intuition avoid prolonged entanglement with false friends, while those who ignore it often suffer deeper betrayals later. The necessity of trusting intuition lies in its protective function, guarding the psyche against the corrosive effects of falsity. The unconscious also sharpens intuition through archetypal recognition. The deception often embodies the archetype of the trickster, a figure that disrupts order through cunning and disguise. The trickster friend may appear amusing, charismatic, or resourceful, but beneath the surface lies manipulation. Authenticity, by contrast, resonates with the archetype of the wise guide or the loyal companion. These archetypal patterns are universal, and the unconscious recognizes them instinctively. Even when the ego is charmed by the trickster's persona, the unconscious feels the danger of the archetype. Intuition communicates this recognition through sudden doubts, uneasy dreams, or symbolic encounters. By learning to recognize archetypal patterns in behavior, we strengthen our capacity to discern deception from authenticity. The development of intuitive recognition is part of individuation itself. Jung saw individuation as the lifelong process of integrating the conscious and unconscious, becoming whole by reconciling opposites. Intuition is one of the bridges between these realms, offering insights that transcend rational analysis. To cultivate it is to deepen the dialogue between ego and self, allowing the unconscious to guide conscious life. In relationships, this means seeing beyond masks into the deeper truth of others. It means recognizing authenticity not only through reason, but through resonance with the self. The authentic friend supports individuation because they align with truth, while the fake friend obstructs it by entangling us in deception. Intuition reveals this difference, guiding us toward relationships that foster wholeness. Ultimately, the intuitive recognition of authenticity versus deception is not a rare gift reserved for a few, but a natural human faculty that can be cultivated by anyone willing to listen to the unconscious. It requires awareness of projections, attention to dreams and symbols, sensitivity to bodily cues, openness to synchronicity, and the courage to face uncomfortable truths. Jung's psychology shows that the unconscious is always guiding us, always revealing more than the conscious mind perceives. By honoring this guidance, we protect ourselves from deception, nurture authentic connections, and move closer to the wholeness the self demands. Authenticity resonates deeply, deception dissonantly, and intuition is this instrument that hears the difference. To trust it is to align with the deeper wisdom of the psyche, ensuring that we are not blinded by masks, but guided by truth.